Hello and welcome to another motorcycle video. This is part 2 of riding the Spyder around Goulburn, and this one I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other safety features and how to ride the bike, and then just talk a little bit about the scenery. So at the moment I'm on, for those locally, I'm on the Goulburn road, which connects the Braidwood Road with the Hume Highway. On my right, running parallel to me, is the Hume Highway and the Goulburn bypass. I've run up this road quite a few times, and I've ridden up it a few times on my other bike, but also I think this is probably the second or third time I've ridden up here with it. The first time I've taken it with the camera. I mentioned in the last video about the various safety systems that the Can-Am Spyder has, those things that are known as the VSS, or Vehicle Stability System, or by some of the people who ride them as the nanny, as that sort of thing that clicks in like the nanny state that some people derisively talk about, that protects you from all sorts of things. And this machine, those features are there for a good reason. And I often come across other people who ride these bikes, machines, and vlog about them and write about them and so on, and they talk about being able to disable various things, or wanting to be able to disable various things. One of the things I often hear is that they wish they could disable the traction control, and I often stop and think to myself and ask the question why. I hear sometimes people say, oh, if they could disable it, they could drift it. Now, I'm not sure what drifting is or why you want to do it on a machine like this, but I mean, to each person their own pleasure, and those are fine things to do on a track, on a racetrack where everybody's going in the same direction as you are, and we've all agreed that's what we're doing. But on the road, it's a different thing. Now, always I think that with any motorcycle or car or thing like that, there are a series of decisions and compromises that are made by the people who produce the thing. The first, I guess, compromise is to decide, well, or decision they have to make is, well, can we actually make this thing? Is it possible to physically make what it is we want to make? Now, in the case of making a new model car or a new model something or other, that's reasonably easy because you've already got the old one to base it on. In the case of this machine, I guess the first question was to ask was, well, can we physically actually make this machine? We haven't done it before, so can we do it? And then when they sat down at the drawing board and said, let's put 2 wheels on the front and 1 wheel on the back, and let's do this and let's do that, they came up with the design and then set to work on making it. The second compromise is, the second decision is, how much can we make it for? How much money are we prepared to spend on each unit to make one of these things, so that then we can sell it and make some money on it. So when we sell it, the difference between what we made it for and what we sell it for will be our profit, we hope. The third compromise, or third decision I guess they make, is, well, what things have we got to put on this thing to, first of all, make it safe, and secondly, make it saleable, so that people will say, I want to buy one of those, it's got all the things that I want, it's got safety features, it's got this, that, and the other. The last thing a manufacturer wants to do is be in a situation where their machine is considered unsafe at any price or at any speed, and it's a dangerous machine. I guess if that was the case these days, it probably wouldn't even pass the design rules and wouldn't be allowed to be sold in Australia. But nevertheless, the manufacturer wants to say, well, my machine is safe to drive. It has all the safety features that will prevent, as far as we can prevent, humanly possible, remembering that the human being is the most difficult factor in any accident. We know what the machine will do, we don't necessarily know what the person driving it or riding it's going to do. So they put a whole bunch of safety features on there that will first of all ensure that they are free from litigation where possible, and secondly, that the machine is safe. So if somebody starts saying, well, let's take this off, or let's take that off, let's turn this thing off, or let's not have that thing active, it affects the dynamics of the bike. And of course, every manufacturer tells you, don't add things to my machine that weren't made by me, because they will affect something or other besides the warranty. So if you put non-genuine Can-Am parts on it and something goes wrong, we'll say it's because you put the non-genuine Can-Am part on it. Now, of course, that is first of all to get you to buy more of their stuff, buy their parts rather than buy the aftermarket parts. But there may be some truth in that as well when you consider how many electronics there are on this particular machine. But I guess the point is, all of these vehicle stability systems, this nanny system, as it's referred to sometimes, are there for a reason. They're not there to be a nuisance. They're there to keep the rider safe, and they're there to keep the machine on the road and as far as possible stable, and as far as possible avoid accidents, providing you ride it properly and you ride it according to the instructions. All right, that said and that out of the way, there's a couple of other things I should talk about in terms of operation. Number one is the transmission. This machine has what is called a semi-automatic. Some people call it dual clutch, some people call it flappy paddle. For the want of a better word, I'm just going to call it the semi-automatic transmission. And what that means is on the left-hand switch cluster, about where your thumb would be, is a plus sign. And when you want to change gears, you just press the plus button and the gear will change from first to second and third and so on. When you want to change down, there are a couple of options. Number one is you can simply use your pointer finger, and there's a button on the back of the handlebar, which I showed you in one of my videos earlier, that you just press and the change down will take place. So it's almost like a manual, except there's no clutch. You can also touch the brake, and when you touch the brake, the bike will sense that you are slowing down, obviously, and the computer systems will go to work and they will progressively change down as the revs begin to drop, and they will match the revs to the engine speed and so on, and you will change down almost automatically. You've still got to use the brake to actually slow the bike down, of course, so don't think, well, just changing down and doing engine braking is enough. Now, one of the things that is a little bit unclear in the manual is how to handle the change up. I asked a couple of people, and I asked the bloke I bought it from, and he said to me, it doesn't matter which way you do it. In other words, you can just press the button and change up, or you can treat it like a genuine manual and close the throttle off and press the button and change up and then open the throttle again. And I've found by doing both of those things that the best way to do it is to close the throttle off, press the up button and then open the throttle, a bit like you would do if you were driving a manual car or riding your motorbike. You close the throttle off, pull the clutch in, make the change, let the clutch out and go again. Now the reason I say to do it that way is because it seemed to me that just pressing the button, the changes were a bit clunkier. There was a louder sort of thunk as each gear was accessed, and also there was a bit of a jolt, if you might, for want of a better word, in the bike itself when the next gear engaged. And I found that if you just continued to change up using the if you closed off the throttle like a manual and changed that way, then you reduce the thunk and you reduce that sort of clunk jolt that you get through the bike if you don't do it. The other thing to sort of think about is if you look at this road I'm on at the moment, or any road you can see in Australia, the roads are designed in what's called a macadamised system. I think it's named after a Scottish engineer whose name was James McAdams, and he came up with the idea that a road should have a crown in the centre and should camber away to the edges so the water would flow off it. Previous to that, most roads have been built according to the Roman method, which was simply flat, and obviously when it's flat the water just stays there. So in order for the water to drain off, the crown of the road is where the middle line is, here where you can see where the white line is, and the road cambers to the left. And so that's because we drive on the left. As you're riding down the road, there is a natural tendency of any vehicle to pull slightly towards the left. That is because of gravity, and gravity wants to find the lowest point, and the lowest point of the road is on the left-hand side. When you're riding this bike, because it's almost as wide, as I've said several times now, as a small hatch, you are riding in almost the same grooves that have been made by many cars, and the left-hand wheel is in the groove, if you like, or the alleyway. I'm not sure what the right word there is. That would be the left-hand wheel for most cars, and so the bike has a bit of a tendency to pull to the left. Not dangerously so, just the same as your car does, because you have this dynamic power steering that I mentioned earlier. You just need to drive and steer the bike as you would naturally, but the significant difference is, of course, you don't have that situation with a two-wheeler because you've got one wheel in behind the other wheel, and they both go in the same line, hopefully, and you can choose to ride in the groove for the left-hand wheel or the right-hand wheel, or ride in the groove somewhere between those two when you're in the lane, depending on what you want to do and where you're riding and so on. I always found with the two-wheel it was best to sort of change your position a little bit and move across the line of the lane a little bit so that the people who were in front of you could see you moving about in their rear vision mirror, and would notice that you were there, and the bloke that was behind you would see you moving about in the lane a bit and also notice that you were there. So it was a safety feature for yourself. Now I'm just coming back into Goulburn from, this is the Hume Highway. If I'd have continued on where I turned off and came back to Goulburn, I would have gone either to, if I'd have taken the left turn, I would have gone to Canberra, or taken the right fork, I would have gone to Yass. I didn't want to go to either of those places today. I just wanted to come back to Goulburn. In this video, at the moment on the camera, you can see a bit of a view of the upper part of the dashboard. The camera is attached to the windscreen, one of those suction caps, and at high speed, and you can probably notice it in this part of the video here, it gets a bit of a vibration through the windscreen. I must say very little of that comes through the handlebars to the rider, but there's a lot of vibration comes through the windscreen in the dashboard there, and the nuts and bolts that hold the camera equipment together became loosened, and the camera became took up a different position. So it's later on, a little bit later on, I had to actually stop and adjust it all. So you'll see that when it comes up. I'm just coming back into Goulburn, near the South Goulburn entrance, and you can see the shoe shop for men on the left hand side there. That is Bunnings. And then, as I've talked about in a couple of other videos, running videos mainly, the takeaway alley. I'm going to make a left-hand turn here in a moment and go into an area called Runner Waters Estate up Ducks Lane. And so just reminding you about the things that I'd said when you're making a left-hand turn. Much easier because you're on the left-hand side of the road, so it's not a 90-degree turn. Here you've got a turning lane to go into, and although I'm slowing down probably into first gear just in case something's coming around the roundabout at the same time from my right, I'm leaning towards the left with my body. I'm pointing my head and my shoulder in the direction of the turn that I want to go, and I'm pulling the left-hand handlebar towards me, keeping my elbow close to my body, and my right arm is straightening out, but I'm trying to keep my elbow reasonably close to my body so I don't get that chicken wing effect. Now, coming up to a roundabout here, and this is where I was talking at one other stage about making, say, a 180 or 270 degree turn. Now here, it's not possible to make a 270 degree turn because the road is closed on the 270 turn, but just a sort of 180. So you just have to kind of do all those things that I said earlier, only you're going right. So you point your head in the direction of the turn, and your body sort of, you need to counteract that force that pushes you back and towards the left of the bike a little bit. It's a bit like when you're on a merry-go-round. If you on the merry-go-round and you don't hold on properly and tightly, the merry-go-round will push you out and away from the centre of the merry-go-round, and you've actually got to hold yourself in if you don't want to fall off. I went past this turn here and then decided I would go down this road. So luckily there was no traffic on the road and I could make a crazy turn like this. I don't recommend anyone else do it. This area is, as I said, called Runner Waters Estate. It's just a housing estate that's sort of a couple of k's, I think it's about 3 k's from my home out of Goulburn going south. Lots of biggish looking houses here in large blocks. There's an issue with this estate here. There's only one road in and out, and it's a sort of semi-rural setting, and the people who live here have complained numerous times to the council about that. The issue being if there was a bushfire emergency in this area, there's only one road in and out, and it could easily be clogged by all the people who want to leave at any given point, and allowing that emergency vehicles we wanting to get in, the police would want to be controlling people getting in case of the fires. The residents here don't think that's a particularly safe idea, and I'm afraid I'm inclined to agree with them, to be honest. So just driving around here, and you can see the road is sweeping around to the left here, so I'm doing those things that I had said earlier, which is sort of leaning my body slightly to the left, turning my head in the direction that I want to go, and doing those other things that I'd said earlier. I should again emphasise that I'm not a qualified motorcycle instructor. I've only ridden this thing now for about 250 k, so the things that I say are just based on my own experience, and you should always read the manual if you have one. You should, if you possibly can, take a training course. Otherwise, get out somewhere where it's possible to practice the drills that are shown in the manual, and that is in an empty car park or somewhere like that, and just practice going up and down until you get a feel for how the machine works. I'm stopping here, as you can see, because the camera was have become dislodged, if that's the best word for it. It's pointing at the windscreen rather than sort of getting a good view of the road ahead. So you can see my fingers on the camera now. I could edit that out, but I decided I'd just leave it in while I made my point, tighten up all the nuts and screws and bolts or whatever, and set off again, hopefully. Seem to sit here for a little while I got all that tight and put the gloves back on, and was all ready to set going again, or get going again, as you will hopefully see in a moment. And start off, and then saw a car in the rear vision mirror just past me, so then off I go. So just riding more around this Run of Waters estate. There are several roads here. One's called Ducks Lane, the other one's called Run of Waters Road. I can't remember what the other ones are called, but it's quite picturesque to sort of walk around it. And I know that some people in the running group often use these roads here as part of their running course as well. You can see, hopefully in this picture here, some of the large blocks of ground, big houses that are on those blocks of ground. Again, a sort of left turn, a curve in the road that's going to the left. So those sort of things that I said to do earlier, you need to think about. And as you can see, coming up towards the right, you probably don't need to do those things quite as much with a curve like this, because the opposite forces, or forces that are going to try and push you off the bike and so on, or put you back on the seat and so on, are not as severe, because it's just not a sharper turn. It's just a curve in the road. But you've always got to be conscious that this is not going to work like a two-wheeler. Alright, we're coming close to the end of the video, so thank you for watching. I hope you've learned a few things about how to ride the machine. There'll be one more part to this set of videos that I'll talk to you about in the next one, so thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed and learned a little bit about how the machine works.